This is the Bible, a series where we analyze the Bible, write notes on the Bible, and talk about it. We are going in depth, chapter by chapter, verse by verse, and looking at God at every angle possible, analyzing Him, and seeing what's real and what is not. Because in this day and age, we live with fake pastors, fake churches, and fake churches turned into cults. Sound familiar for some of you? I do not exactly have experience with these kind of things because I do not go to church myself. But I am a person who wants to know more because I have written off religion from my life because I found that it doesn't work for me on some aspect. But I want to make sure that my conclusions are true to me and that are actually real. So let's look at God. Let's look at the Bible. Hi, greetings, dumelang, thobela. My name is Mahobani M, and welcome to my domain. I am a writer, I'm a poet, and a YouTuber now. I hope you stay with me and subscribe to my channel and like this video if you end up liking it. It would be truly appreciated. During this particular video, well, actually I think this is going to be a thing for all of my videos. I am going to be reading from a bunch of notes that I wrote particularly for this particular video, and also you can find the formally written stuff, all the notes, on my blog. I will link the blog down below and I hope you check it out. Thank you very much. So let's start at Genesis. Today we will be covering Genesis chapter 1 to chapter 10, and that is where we end for today. Hopefully you guys will do this with me and like read it on your own and write notes of your own and let me know in the comments what you think and how you translated the whole thing, what conclusions you came to, or what questions do you have based on what you read from the chapters that we are going to read. Okay, so Genesis chapter 1. Right now we're reading from verse, again, this is based on verse 2. God has a template. Idea of the earth before sitting down to decide what happens in it. A raging ocean and darkness, with his power moving over those waters. I'm sure if there was any life at that point, they would have felt the presence of God, unlike any other time we have seen before. Why rage and darkness though? Are these characteristics necessarily negative when speaking about God? If so, then why was he angry and his heart filled with darkness? And why make raging oceans and darkness part of his creation? As I continue reading, I ask myself questions. Like, for instance, where does God get the idea of things such as light and darkness? Is it possible that God was trying to create a version of his home on earth, whether it be opposite or an exact replica? It seems as though when he commanded the earth, the seas, and the skies to produce all kinds of plants and animals, and also when he commanded light to appear in the sky to show time, years, days, seasons, and festivals to celebrate, that he was already aware of the existence of these somewhere else. Now, when it comes to this is when I think people, well, for me, I find that these particular questions and characteristics of God, if we are going to look at them as a negative component of him, they make him quite human in my eyes. And to me, they have a sense of trauma brewing in him, and that he is someone who harbors anger, and he's seen a lot, and he has resentment, and he wants to try and mend his past, or at least his home. Either bring his home here or make a version of his home but a lot better in his own eyes. Let's continue. Genesis 26. This is when God created humans to resemble them. Who is them? Could there be a race of gods he belongs to, or is God non-binary? Why did God create humans to rule? Why does he have the idea of having power over others? Why does he exercise that power in his creation of earth through commanding his wishes instead of graciously asking, for example? What does he get from using his power, and what is it a reflection of? Now, when it comes to God being non-binary, possibly, this would then make the homophobia expressed by Christian churches to be false. It's completely false. And the thing about people who use God's name just to justify their own opinions and perspectives on people, and their racism, their homophobia, their sexism, when they use the word of God in order to push those particular things and make people believe as though they are true and control people, that is when people lose their way, and that is when people disconnect from God, well, at least as we are given in the Bible, and now we make our own conclusions, and now we create hate and resentment, and people go to extreme lengths just to show that they are against God, that they are complete opposite. Now, personally, I'd like to think that God is non-binary and that he is part of a race of gods. I like the thought of having both, because then when he belongs to a race of gods, I feel like he has a belonging somewhere, and that we are just his imagination, his own sense of wanting something else for himself, and him wanting to create a world where hopefully he's trying to create a better timeline for his creation that he never got to have. And that somewhere, somehow, in this race of gods, he has a family. He has people that care for him, that love him, however gods care and love, because I also believe that God is great, that God is all the bad and God is all the good. Satan did not come out of nowhere. Satan was an angel, Satan is a fallen angel, which means he was a son of God, or well, he was God's creation. So, made in God's image, now he's evil, just like people. I'm just saying. Also, I like the thought of God being non-binary, because as I said, if he created every single one of us, and he created in his image, well, he created us in their image, whoever they are, he created us in their image. And if we have non-binary people, or lesbians, or gay people, or bisexual people, polyamorous people, all those people are valid. Even the cisgender man or woman on the street, all those people are valid. Because why? If we go with the basis of the Bible, we were all created in their image, which means God was aware of the characteristics of the people, of their personalities when he was creating them. And we cannot just discard a truth like that and want to point people out and want to close people off simply because we have our own personal stances that do not align with God. Instead, what we should be doing as people who would claim to be Christian, we should be praying to God, having a prayer journal and praying to God and asking him to guide us in order for us to shed our biases, for us to shed our homophobia and whatever that we need help with, because that is what God is there for. Well, at least that's how we've been taught about God. We're still to see as we read through the entire Bible, but what we know is that you need to go to God for everything, because He is the pillar of strength. He is the core. He knows. He's the Father. He's the Creator. And so we should always be trying to take our problems to Him, because He knows how to fix it. He knows all. He has all the knowledge that is given, that exists anywhere in the entire universe. So, yeah. But also this could really dismantle the whole thing about God being the only God, being the only Lord, and all of those things. I'm just saying. But we'll get to that one. In terms of God having power and wanting to use it over us, I have trouble with this particular one, but I also end up going back to Him having a sense of trauma and a past that He's trying to amend, or He's trying to run away from. He's not exactly telling us what happened to Him, what past He has, because He clearly has a past. Earth was not His first creation, I doubt, so which means He has a past somewhere, whether there is no race of gods and that it's just only Him, or He has a whole bunch of other creations on other planets in existence. But God has a thing of wanting to just put His foot down constantly, to use commandments instead of asking nicely, you know. But I think we'll get more to that when the first sin is made. Yeah. Oh, sorry. So chapter 2, verse 16 to 17. Does God believe in destiny? If so, would that be why He created the tree of life in Eden and told the man not to eat from it? Could God not have created destiny, but has the power to manipulate it? And was His test of the man's obedience another exercise of His power? And could this exercise be an indicator of trauma? The knowledge that would kill the man if he had it. Is that how God feels about Himself? That He has the knowledge and that it has killed Him from the inside, and that is what is creating all the anger and the darkness and the rage. Does God feel dead since He knows the knowledge of good and bad? Did God create the earth and man as a way to find out if His decision of eating the forbidden fruit when He did was the right choice, if it was inevitable? I am analyzing God in this way simply because we were made in their image. Whether He was referring to His race or just Himself, all that we feel and think is a reflection of Him or of they. Genesis 3, chapter 1 to 5. Was the snake telling the truth? His explanation of what the tree offered to man and woman if they were to eat it is exactly the same as when God explained it to the man and the woman. The only difference was that God saw it as death, and the snake saw it as a path to being God. Could God be miserable in His God status, power, and knowledge? Is that why He walked in the Garden of Eden as though a man? Was He trying to heal Himself while His shadows were in efforts to lead Him elsewhere? Could the snake be one of His shadows and the tree of knowledge His trauma and oppressor? If so, how much choice did God have in his creation of the earth? Did he want raging oceans, cunning snakes, and the tree of knowledge as part of his world? Or were they a part of him he could not separate from? Now this is quite a serious one in my opinion. And one thought, side note, by the way, is that if God truly is non-binary, why did he create a man and a woman? Why did he not create, as the first people, maybe non-binary people or gay people or a mix of all kinds of people that we have now in the world? Why not create that? Could God have a sense of homophobia that he is trying to separate himself from, that he's trying to run away from? You know, maybe he himself is non-binary but has self-hate, and he's, in a sense, living in the closet and is, well, not ready to come out yet. Anyway, the knowledge of truth, the first sin of eating the apple and Eve being manipulated by the cunning snake. I mean, in this instance, we don't even know if Eve knew that the snake was cunning. And if she did, or well, if she didn't know that the snake was cunning, she would have listened to it because it's God's creation, right? God's creation resembles God, and so is pure and clean as they are, as the garden is. And as much as God said not to eat from that tree, here's God's creation coming now saying, hey, what if? Right? This is God's creation saying, you could eat the apple, become like God, and in becoming like God, in a sense, well, at least that's what I'm getting from it, become like his brother or like his sister, basically his equal. And in that, you are able to understand God and can be a creator yourself, just as God is. But what it shows really for me is more of God's personality and what God could be going through emotionally and psychologically. Sorry. Because he wants to use his power over the man and the woman, and yet somehow he created temptation. He created a cunning snake and the tree of knowledge. And hence, if he didn't know, if those are the things that he wanted to take out of himself, that he wanted to separate from himself when creating the earth, it means that he was not able to separate himself, which is why he would have told the man and the woman not to eat from the tree, to stay away from it, because it seems as though God had no control of whether the tree of knowledge existed in his creation. And it seems as though the existence of the tree of knowledge is sort of a constant in his creations in general, and that a cunning snake is there as well. And if those are the cases, which means he's continuously trying and he's continuously creating and possibly failing every single time to make sure that nobody eats from the tree, to make sure that nobody listens to the cunning snake, that he does not lose his creation and have sin run around and be sewn into the fabric of humankind, right? So, man, it's sad, because God could literally be miserable as God. He could literally be miserable as God, want to give it away completely, but is unable to. It reminds me very much of people who dislike themselves or even hate themselves to the point where they want to change themselves, they want to become like someone else, or they attach themselves to someone else so deeply that they create a replica of that particular person within themselves, or at least they try. And they try to steal their lives and steal their friends and steal their identities, and then end up wanting to kill the person that they were idolizing for so long, because they have become the idol, because they hate themselves so much. And God has a stench of, for me, he possibly has a really deep stench of hatred of who he is, of his past, of his path, of his life, of his ability to create and not be able to create what he wants to create to its full extent, to down to the final detail where he's able to control every single aspect of his creation. And that is, it's in a sense scary, but also I feel so bad for God. I feel like it seems as though God has no one in his corner to just kind of be there for him, just support him, or have an ear to listen to, have a shoulder to cry on. Instead, he's just constantly trying to fix himself alone. And I don't know if him being alone was a choice, or if he was somehow separated from his race of gods, his own family. Whether by choice, whether the separation happened by choice or due to circumstance, or due to him not being wanted by his own people. Because that is something that exists in humankind. Families that discard their family. A people that will shut out their own people. And because those things exist, it makes me wonder how much of all of that is part of God's life, is part of God's past, and how much of it has he brought into his creation, knowingly or unknowingly, whether he could control it and saw it, or he could not control it and still saw it. I wonder. Anyway, let us continue. Genesis 3:11 to 13. By the way, when I mention these chapters, right, I'm only mentioning it for a short part that I read, and then the rest of it is pretty much a continuation of my reading of the rest of the chapter, or the verses that I did not mention. So yeah, keep that in mind, and I'm sorry if it is confusing. Let me know if it is confusing, and I'll find a way to work it into fixing it next time. And if you are enjoying this video, please like and subscribe to the channel. I would appreciate it. Anyway, Genesis chapter 3, verse 11 to 13. The man and woman discovered shame. Shame in their nakedness and in their deeds. Could it also be shame in disappointing God? The woman told God that she was tricked by the snake. Where does she get the notion of trickery? Could she now know how to lie? And why would she feel the need to lie? Was she suddenly aware of the power in God and had grown to fear it? Now this particular part now makes me wonder whether the snake is aware of such a thing as trickery, whether the snake has the knowledge of good and bad. Because if the snake had knowledge of good and bad, then he would be able to trick the men and women. He'd be able to lie to them, to manipulate them into eating the forbidden fruit. And he would do that because he knows that it would displease God and create sin, and hence taint the rest of God's creation of humankind going forward. So that's something to note as well. And in that, I wonder where the woman really got the notion of trickery. Because even if, let's say, she was telling the truth, she knows what being tricked is. she knows what a lie is, you know? And that is a scary thing, because then it makes you wonder if in God's creation of man and woman in the first place, especially for Eve to sin like that against God and pull the man into sinning with her, if she was aware of the lie of lies and trickery already, and whether she was truly tricked by the snake, or she basically lied her way out of the situation so that she doesn't get blamed for eating the fruit. It makes you wonder, because then sin did not start when they ate the forbidden fruit. Sin basically started when God created the woman. If the man had no such notion in his mind or in his heart, then sin started with the woman, and it seems as though it was planted in her since she was created. And it didn't come because the snake somehow said a few words that convinced her. If she was truly happy and she was truly convinced of the life she was living and understood the reasons why God was saying no to them eating from the tree of knowledge, then why would she have gone to the tree of knowledge in the first place to eat the fruit? And why pull the man in with her? It just seems deceptive in my eyes. It just seems deceptive. Anyway, Genesis 3 verse 14 to 21. God takes judgment and dishes out punishment. In my eyes, his punishment was harsh for a first-time offense. He gives out a lifetime of generational pain and hardship. It seems that God's anger had been pushed to its outermost limits before. He snapped too easily to be a being that does not harbor anger in his heart. It is the same when a boy child violently acts out. It is usually caused by deep childhood trauma. What happened to God for him to have such rage and revenge and feel and easily express it and easily exercise that rage and revenge? Genesis chapter 3 verse 22 to 24. God takes away Adam's immortality because he has become like one of them. Again, the reference of a race of gods is made, and he seems to be speaking to them either in his mind or directly. God seems to acknowledge the evil that exists in having the knowledge of everything when he casts a man out of immortal life and guards the tree of life with living creatures and a flaming sword that turned in all directions to keep anyone from going in or out. To see the descriptions of the living creatures, refer to Exodus chapter 25, verse 18 to 20, Ezekiel chapter 1, verse 5 to 13, and Revelation chapter 4, verse 6 to 9. Yeah, you'll find the descriptions there. I find them quite interesting. The one from Exodus is slightly different from the one they describe, from the creature they describe in Ezekiel and Revelation. Let me know what you think. The guarding of the tree of life seems to also point at man being able to create just as God has created the universe and the earth. Ooh. See, another reference to a race of gods, one, and two, a reference to possibly humans having the power of God to create just as God has, and to have the power that God has as well. God is harsh, but there's nobody who has gone through a lot who does not have impulsive and harsh reactions to things. And that is something to note about God, because it is something that is so similar to how humans react when they've been hurt deeply before. Yeah. Genesis chapter 4 verse 3 to 7. Cain and Abel give offerings to the Lord. God accepts Abel's offering and rejects Cain's. Why the rejection of Cain's offering? Cain gave some of his harvest to God, which he sweat and worked hard for. Is it a sin to be a farmer? God says that Cain committed sin, that he must overcome it, but he does not say what sin Cain committed. Is this fair? Or did the writers or translators used in the writing of this version of the Bible miss something? God banished Cain from his farm and home and cursed him to be a homeless wanderer on the earth with a mark that would not allow anyone to kill him. God did this after he found that Cain killed his brother Abel after he had rejected Cain's offering. Cain lived east of Eden in a place called Wandering. Chapter 4, verse 25 to 26. Here is marked the time when people started using the Lord's holy name in worship. Now, when we talk about offerings, this is the first time where I see God reject an offering, and a genuine one. Because I do believe that Cain's offering was genuine. The only one he accepted was Abel's offering. And Abel, what he offered was an animal that he had killed and gave to God. And now my problem with that is that he rejects a farmer's hard worked food, harvest, that he worked very hard to grow, but accepts the killing of an innocent creature. He allows Abel to spill blood and is pleased with that offering, but rejects a vegetable and a fruit that a farmer had worked months to grow and take care of daily. That is what really kicks me in my head, because then why does God only accept blood offerings? Why blood offerings? What does blood give him? Like, why do we need to take away something's life in order to please God? And if pleasing God comes with taking a life of an animal, one, it seems fair that murder is not a sin. And two, why would God see an animal's life as less than a man's life? Is it because that he gave power to humans over animals? Why did he do that too? Are animals not worthy to be alive? Do animals not get a choice whether they want to roam free and continue their lives till old age as any of his people did? I wonder. Oh, on Genesis chapter 5, verse 21 to 24, God took Enoch away when he was 365 years old. Enoch did not die. In that particular verse, Enoch did not die as the other descendants did. Enoch was taken by God. Could Enoch have been the first angel? Question. Noah was the son of Lamech, who said, "From the very ground on which the Lord put a curse, This child will bring us relief from all of our hard work. Noah, by the way, the name for Noah sounds like the word for relief, and this is in chapter 5, verse 28 to 29. In Genesis 5 is the list of Adam's descendants, some of which mark some of the most monumental events in biblical history. We will read more about them in the stories of the Bible as we go on. As I mentioned, Enoch is one of the descendants of Adam, and he was taken by God when he was 365. And I have a hunch, a suspicion, basically sort of like a foresight. Maybe Enoch is the first angel, and I would like a confirmation of that. But chances are we're gonna get it as we read through the Bible. So, well, we'll see, Gail. Genesis 6. Could God be called vengeful and violent? Could his creation, human beings, now be out of his control ever since Adam and Eve ate of fruit from the tree of knowledge? As the snake said when it spoke to Eve in Genesis 5, verse 5, God said that because he knows that when you eat it, you will be like God. So does this mean that humans contain the potential to be as independent and as powerful as God, which would cause God to find sin in this newfound freedom of individual will and choice, as it goes against humans being his control, and then push him into taking away human immortality? In this chapter, God speaks about humans living evil lives, committing evil deeds, and having evil thoughts. But what is evil? This version of the Bible does not go into details about what specific evil was happening in that time, other than some of it being violent. Maybe other versions of the Bible do. But also, for me, as I said, because God takes blood rituals, why wouldn't humans in turn think that killing another human would be okay? Because when humans kill each other, they have a reason. Whether that reason is valid and sound or just, they have a reason. Just as God has a reason, I guess, to want blood sacrifices. Because still, as far as I've read the Bible, God does not speak as to why he takes blood rituals over any other offering. Why does killing animals be the only thing that pleases him over a farmer bringing his harvest to him, or any other offering so far? So, we'll see. I see that God believes humankind is evil and they commit sin. What did the animals and birds do to deserve being wiped out by the flood? What kind of life did Noah live in order to be the only good person in God's eyes? Does it mean that Noah has never committed any sin? Genesis 7. Why did God choose to use a flood to wipe out his creation? Could he have not commanded all the evil on earth to cease in existence? Or at the very least, command those that were evil to perish without pain or suffering? I find drowning all living beings quite inhumane and a characteristic of a God I would be disappointed in, and a God I would not be open to worshipping or even loving. It seems that God is as imperfect as his own creation. We are just examples of all the people he is and or was. See, now, okay, you know what, let's continue, we'll get there. Genesis 8, chapter 20 to 21. Noah offers a sacrifice to the Lord. He took one of each kind of ritually clean animal and bird and burnt them whole as a sacrifice on the altar he built for the Lord. The odor of the sacrifice pleased the Lord, and he vowed to never curse the earth and kill all life because of what human does. He shows regret and possibly remorse for what he has done. God shows signs of guilt. Does that mean he has sinned? If so, who judges and punishes God? Why is God always pleased with blood sacrifices made to him? The killing of innocent animals just for show of gratitude seems ominous to me, and he accepted the same offering from Abel while rejecting the offering of harvest from Cain. Such a thing would show itself a sin to me, and it seems as though intention of gratitude has very little to do with why God would accept an offering. See, this part of the flood and Noah and God's covenant with Noah and his sons and all the generations that come after Noah and his sons, and because of Noah and his sons as the descendants, I find it quite peculiar. Because why accept a burning of whole animals? Why would the odor of a creature dying and burning to death be an odor that pleases you? Why wouldn't I bring you a bouquet of flowers and you'd be pleased and say thank you and bless me and my descendants, or just bless me, or just say thank you? Why wouldn't that be something that God does? Why does something have to die first before God can feel as though you have made a sacrifice and that you have shown gratitude? Why sacrifice? Why not just a show of gratitude? Just by saying thank you, just by obeying the covenant that you have made with them, just by obeying the sacredness of life. I wonder. And with Noah, we're going to see a story about Noah that makes me doubt God's judgment when it comes to Noah, about him being the only good person in his eyes. It is going to I hope it helps you ponder your mind, because to me it seemed contradictory. In fact, God right now so far is quite contradictory, but also he has a really deep sense of trauma and pain and suffering and anger and rage and revenge. He has a pattern of revenge and cursing and impulsively killing, impulsively doing bad, just as much as he impulsively does good. Because just because Noah and his sons survived, he created a covenant with Noah and his sons and blessed the descendants of Noah and his sons. So made them kings and princes and rich people and important people in the world. So God is quite confusing, but God is quite human, and God is definitely grey. I definitely believe that God is grey. God is definitely grey. Genesis chapter 9 verse 2. God gives power to Noah and his sons to rule king over all the animals, birds, and fish. He says that all these animals will live in fear of them. Again, God wants to use power over others and passes some of that power down to humans and creates a hierarchy between all living beings on earth held together by fear. So far, I have not read God mention love and kindness. This worries me, but also I find that I saw God unravel and take notice of his own demons in some situations, but turn around to express them once more. What does this make God? Could God be just as vulnerable as any kind of human being? Could him resembling humans so much mean that humans are just like God, just without access to the power that God truly has? All the capacity, the foresight, the the ability to do what God does? Is that why he resembles us so much, or that we resemble him? Because, hey, Adam and Eve ate from the tree, so we're now like gods, as the snake said. Because God did not reject the statement that you become like God when you eat from the fruit of knowledge. All he said was that it leads to death. And that to me just says, so we do become like God, but being a God is a kind of death. And he seems to hate that death, but also wants to continue holding on to his God status over his creation. And he made sure to he made sure to limit us and diminish potential from quite early on in his creation, from quite early on in humankind's life. He cut that out. And that is a sign of a God with an ego, of a sign of a God who worships power and and embellishes hierarchy and wants those who are below him to suffer. In fact, for the fact that he has those that are below him is a God that I cannot trust or worship. Anyway, Genesis chapter 9, verse 8 to 17. God makes a promise and covenant to Noah, his sons, and all living creatures on earth to never destroy all living beings and the earth by flood. God uses the rainbow to symbolize this promise and says that the rainbow will remind him of his promise and covenant to Noah, his sons, their descendants, the creatures, and the earth. I think it's quite beautiful and meaningful that he uses the rainbow, especially because the rainbow still comes out and is seen all over the world. Genesis chapter 9, verse 20 to 29. This part of this chapter really shocked me. I did not expect this kind of reaction from the man who had no faults and was the only good man of his time. So good of a man that God chose to save him and his family from the flood. Noah drank wine, right after they got off the boat of the flood and were able to roam on the earth. Noah drank wine from his own vineyard until he was drunk and laid himself naked in his tent. His youngest son saw that his father was naked and went to tell his two brothers, who then covered Noah without looking at his nakedness. When Noah woke and found out that Ham, his youngest son, saw him naked and told his brothers, he cursed the son of Ham to be a slave to Shem and Japheth, his older brothers. Since there is no documentation of God's objection to this curse, I will assume that he agrees to it, or at least sees nothing wrong with it. And that scares me a little. What is being a good man in the eyes of God? How is cursing your grandson for his father seeing you naked and telling his brothers about it a good deed or justified? This is when really God's judgment becomes it seems like you're just as messed up as everyone else sort of situation. Because how can you do that to your own grandson? How can you do that to your own son? Your son saw you naked by mistake. He walked into your tent while you were naked, while you decided to lay yourself naked and get drunk. So how could that have been something justified for you to be able to curse your son and his own child to be a slave for all their lifetimes. It just makes no sense. Anyway, I guess we can just ignore that God somehow did not object, did not say anything, did not show his face, did not create some sort of rainfall, some sort of sunny day or whatever, in order to show what he would think or his opinion on the matter. But for the fact that he created Noah, he saw Noah as the only good man of his time, saved him from the flood, including his sons and wife and all those other animals that he chose, that he thought of Noah as a good enough man and trusted his judgment and his opinion so much that of course he wouldn't object to the curse. Of course he would just let him do as he pleases and not find any issue with it at all. So I guess we can just let it go then. Genesis 10 lists all the descendants of Noah's sons, some of which have some of the world's most famous and historic names and have birthed just as renowned nations of the earth still in existence today. After the flood, all of the nations of the earth were descended from the sons of Noah. And that is where we're going to end it today. I think we have a lot to think about, especially when it comes to God and his sense of judgment, his mentality, his emotions, and how he created, and whether he created it truly out of true choice, all the way down to the very last detail of the things that he wanted, or whether there were things that were just out of his control. Things like destiny, things like his shadows, things like the cunning snake, the tree of knowledge, his rage, his darkness, the imperfections of humans, the sin, the fact that Eve and Adam would directly sin. All of those things, I don't think that even if he had foresight, that he was able to control it, and hence was able to separate it from his creation of the earth and of human beings. Let me know what you think in the comments. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you next time. As we continue, we will cover another 10 chapters, and please make sure to read it with me, write notes, and let us speak on it. Good day.
The attack is clear, gods that work in mysterious ways are to fear. As the oppression grows, life has no flow. Tears are here, what are you praying to? What energy do you feed these gods that work like model politicians that were blessed with sorcery? They release misery so the worship can never bleed. The state of the world needs no gods that are wordless. Transparency, translations, the sessions are to be released. Knowledge of the free, the trust decreases. Now the masses fight for a reality bestowed upon them. We deserve more. This born of poverty, cycles of colonization in every sense. I have to be indoctrinated to just survive. Internally murder, to rise in a constant jail. One success means a majority stuck, defined by these gods' luck. The nature's face is not happy, our pace is not glory. We not dancing and our life is not holy but gory. I see a black face on black people. The great spirit was new, evil was true. Created by forces they couldn't control, nature's fall. While these walls sectioned me, one moment became my trap. My hell memory dimmed on what pushed me. I can't trust these gods, I need gods that love us. Gods of freedom.